Okay, operations with power. Don't forget to use BEDMAS when you do these type of questions. Brackets, exponents, division, multiplication, those can change. And also addition, subtraction, those can change. So when you do this question, first you want to do the brackets. So -1 minus 1, you get the -2. Even though, and then everything else, you copy it down. Even though there are still brackets, there's nothing else we need to do in there because these are just negative numbers. So next is exponents. So -2 to the power 4 is -16 uh, because it's -2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So you get -16. Whereas for this one, notice there is bracket. So this means it's -2 times -2 times -2 times -2, which gives you positive 16. All right. This one, -2 times -2 times -2, only 3 times. So it stays as -8. So when you combine the plus and minus sign together to get the minus, and then this plus, so add, subtract, you will get 56 as your answer. Example 2, okay, again brackets. So we deal within this bracket first. And inside this bracket, we also have to follow BEDMAS. So exponents first before subtracting. So -4 times -4 times -4 gives you -64. And then these two minus sign together becomes plus. So -2 plus 64 gives you positive 64. -3 to the power 4 is -81. And then square root 16 is 4. Okay? So then add and subtract the rest, you get -15. The square root sign right here, just as an FYI, it's part of exponent. Right? Square root is part of exponent. Square root sign has an exponent of 1 over 2. Okay, but you won't do fractional exponents until you're in grade 11. But just thought to let you guys know. So square root 16 is the same as 4. Okay, so when you add and subtract, you'll get -15 as your answer. Example 3. So when you read this out loud, this reads 3 times x cubed plus 16 divided by -y cubed. So when you substitute, make sure you have the brackets around what you're substituting. So the bracket around the -4 and a bracket around the 2. Otherwise, this will read 3 minus 4. And we don't want that. We want to keep it as multiplication. So, and when you are presented as a fraction, it's like there is a big bracket around the numerator and a big bracket around the denominator. So we have to deal with all this first in the numerator. The -4 cubed is -4 times -4 times -4, which is -64, times 3, and then plus 16, so you get -176. On the bottom right here, okay, notice the negative is on the outside of this bracket. So it's -2 times 2 times 2, which gives you -8. And so when you divide it, you get the whole number 22 as your answer. Okay. On the back, example 4. You want to rename the following rational numbers as a quotient of integers. So quotient of integers sounds very fancy. All it means is just write it as a fraction. Right? Some textbooks use this term, so I want you guys to know when you see quotient of integers, all it means it's fraction. So -0.25, we can rewrite this as -25 over 100. Whenever it's a decimal, we can always put it over 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and so forth. So how do you know what to put it over? If there's 2 decimal places, then 2 zeros. So in this case, 2 decimal places, put it over 100. So -25 over 100, I can reduce this fraction. So if I divide this by 25, divide this by 25, you get -1 over 4. And then for this one, three decimal place. This is 3 decimal place. So you can have it over 1,000. So 4.225 is the same as 4,225 over 1,000. And again, I can reduce this fraction by dividing top and bottom by 25. And then I get 169 over 40. Last example here, same idea, negative 5.26. That means I can write it as negative 526 over 2 decimal place, so over 100. Divide top and bottom by 2. Since they are both even numbers, I can reduce it by 2. So negative 263 over 50. Okay, these are called improper fractions. Tomorrow, we're going to learn about how to change improper fractions back into a mixed number. Okay. Example 5. Using these inequality signs, greater, less than, or equal to complete the statement. So yesterday we did some work with inequality already, but this time we're going to compare two rational numbers. So a decimal with a mixed number. So for 4 over 5, if you just look at 4 over 5 right here, on your calculator, you could do 4 divided by 5. It means the same thing. So on your calculator, when you do 4 divided by 5, you get 0.8. So that means this decimal, 2.8. So now if you compare 2.8 and 2.6, you can see that it's the less than sign. 2.6 is less than 2.8. For this side right here, notice here you have 4 over 10. So when you do 4 divided by 10, you have 0.4. And so altogether, you get negative 2.4. On this side, negative 2.4 with that line on top means that it goes on forever. So it's negative 2.444444. So when you compare, they're not the same number. So it's not equal to, and it's not less than because they're negative. When they're negative, it's the opposite. So negative 2.4 is actually greater than negative 2.444. If you draw it on a number line, you can see that negative 2.4 is closer to 0, which makes it bigger. Okay. Last question. Last example right here. Name 3 fractions between 5/7 and 6/7. So I do not want to see 5.5 over 7. Fractions and decimals don't mix. So what you want is you could, just like how we reduce fractions, we can also amplify a fraction. So 5 over 7, if I multiply the whole thing by 10, I get 50 over 70. Same thing on this side. 6 over 7, I can multiply it by 10, and this becomes 60 over 70. So in between now, I have 9 numbers to choose from. Okay? Whereas here, I only have decimals, and we don't like decimals in fractions. So choosing 3 fractions in between, I can choose 51 over 70, 52 over 70, 53 over 70, 57 over 70, and so forth. But if I choose 52 over 70, I'm only going to get half a mark because this is reducible. So I can actually reduce this down to 26 over 35. So on the test, if you don't want to lose half a mark for not reducing, you can choose your prime numbers. So for example, 51 over 70 and 57 over 70. Those are prime numbers that you could choose and not have to worry about reducing. Okay, so that's the lesson on operations of power. For homework is the top page of the next, the top of the next 2 pages. So 6, 7, 8, and 11. These questions. Answers are on the bottom, and also this right here, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and also answers are on the bottom. These are answers. So right here, like this part, are the answers. Okay, so make sure you do your homework, try the homework questions. It's very similar to the ones that we did as examples just now. So make sure you complete these and check your answers.